What is good, everybody? Welcome back to Real Fast Sports. My name is Zach. I'm here with my partner, Nonpfixion. What's good with you, brother?
Brother, I'm chilling, man. How about yourself? How are you doing?
I'm doing awesome. We got a great video. We're going to check out something that's called Aussies in Football, the greatest anomaly in sports history.
Okay.
Now, we know a little something about Aussies in football. You know, a lot of punters, very good punters from what everybody has told us. But I was interested to see how big of an impact they've actually had. Like, we know a couple of names, you know, but we don't know the whole story. So hopefully this will give us a deeper dive into that.
Yeah, let's see.
Across the land of sports, many other cultures have influenced the games that they are played, whether it's a unique set of rules like Canadian football, or to how we've adapted fencing from the Egyptians to the sport it is today by a conglomeration of efforts from people around the world to find the most effective tactics available. It is rare, however, for a sport to be played in a completely different country exclusively to have an impact on another unrelated sport played once again in a separate country almost exclusively. For most cases, it's hard to even imagine how this would be possible, but as soon as I mention this, most people that live and exist in the same sphere of influence as I do immediately jumped to one of the greatest sporting phenomenons in modern history: the connection between Australians' rules footy and American football. To begin understanding how this happened, let's first break down a specific position in football. The punter. A seemingly small cog in a larger scheme of this game, his job is very niche, and it's when a team fails to convert a third down conversion, given the right circumstances, they kick the ball to the opposing team as far as you can to start the drive, preferably on the opposite side of the field so your defense can make a stop and get the ball back. This is arguably one of the most important plays in a game of football because it often represents...
I don't necessarily know about that. That might be a little bit of a reach. I don't know if I'd say it's the most important, but it is very important.
Back in the day, it used to be a weapon. Back in the day, punting was definitely a weapon. So, I mean, it's different, a little different now because not too many punters are really that good, but back in the day, it was definitely a difference.
Well, and that's the thing that we've always talked with people that have brought this up. It's like we feel like punting in today's game has definitely been watered down. Like skillful punters is not what it used to be, especially, you know, 90s, 2000s stuff where, you used to have your coffin corner punters. You know, they wouldn't even give the returner a chance at returning it because they would angle it so much to where it would go out of bounds at its furthest distance. And they'd paint those corners where it goes out inside the 5, inside the 10, and they don't even get a chance to return. Now it's always in the middle of the field. You know, there is an art to punting it in how you angle the nose of the football in order for it to backspin once it bounces or to bounce forward. You know, so there are some different crafts and stuff with it, but we don't see that pure coffin corner punting like we used to.
No, definitely don't. I do think it has to do with a bigger picture of excitement in the sport. So I don't even know if they are allowed to do that anymore.
I wonder if the NFL was like, hey, like, you know, this is making the game boring. We want returns. So
I think
there's an unwritten rule of you're only allowed to do it X amount of times a year or something. That would actually be kind of crazy if it is.
You rarely see people do it, and
it used to be a staple. It used to be a staple.
It was a skill. It was a skill set.
Interesting.
40 to 50 yards of field position every time this play happens, which is a stat that can't be attributed to any other play in the game. Heck, it's such a powerful play that some teams in the 40s even tried punting on first down just to maximize its field position, but this turned out to be a bad stat. It's just used to prove the point that this was a very powerful play. Just looking at this year, though, the difference between having the best punter in the National Football League by net average compared to having the worst punter in the National Football League by net average means you'd be starting nearly 10 yards closer every single drive, which is a sizable difference. The traditional American style of punt is what we like to call a spiral, where you'd catch the ball, you'd walk straight down the field to where you're trying to kick the ball to, and just generally kick straight up beneath the ball, causing it to roll off your foot and look like a spiral, or for those who can't imagine that, a pass. Like many have stated, this is the best way to get a combination of distance and hang time, but due to the intense precision required to hit the exact spot on your foot to make the ball spiral, it does have consistency issues, and due to the wild spiraling nature, it also has some slight accuracy issues as that ball could fade one direction or the other, and it's very hard to control. For years, NFL punters have worked on perfecting this straight-on style of punting and have gotten incredibly far with it. I mean, think about this. Back in 1940, Sammy Baugh was able to set a record of 51.4 yards a punt, and that record stood for 83 years until just this year it was broken by Ryan Stonehouse. So clearly, it's a style that
I actually was watching this game, and I remember them talking about it, and I was like, oh, cool. I was like, it's still the Titans, but I was like, cool, you know? Okay.
Still trying to perfect. But in the midst of our attempt to perfect this style, there was another force working, maybe not against these efforts, but definitely not parallel. Let me introduce you to Darren Bennett. You see, Darren was also an NFL punter, but his style was a bit different. He didn't hit every ball in a traditional style. In fact, for the first time in NFL history, he brought something new to this position. He brought this thing called the drop punt. It's where you bring the nose of the ball down, so you're hitting it at a slight angle instead of straight up and down when you kick it, and instead of it spiraling, it spins sort of like a saw blade through the air. His combination of massive leg power and seemingly ethereal control over the ball was something we had never seen before at this league, earning him...
Yeah. Oh, goodness, that field, man. Good memories, bad times.
Bad times.
Multiple Pro Bowls and even making
but that is what I was talking about with how they do it to bounce, make it bounce backwards as well, is dipping that toe down. That way when it rotates, it hits and it's likely to bounce straight up rather than when it's hit in that spiral motion, it typically skips and will bounce forward. You know, so that's definitely been a big adaptation.
It can also cause it on that first bounce to have like a dead bounce. So it doesn't really, it'll just bounce and stops.
And just stops, yeah.
Him to the all-decade team, but unlike most other people on these lists, he hadn't been playing football his whole life. Heck, his resume only includes the game of American football that he played at the professional level, meaning he never played in high school or college, which is the typical American route. And the other difference between Bennett and everybody else on the all-decade list, he was the only Australian. This level of play was not the last we'd see of Australians playing American football, far from it actually, as they begin to trickle down, first with Nathan Chapman going next in the NFL, then Matt Greer, Ben Graham, and Sav Rocca all making their splash in the league, and Aussies would sprinkle in and out of the league here and there, always to pretty decent levels of
a little tune in the background. I like it. I like it.
Success. Things would really bust open in America, though, after one fateful year. 2013, the year Tom Hornsey won the Ray Guy Award, the award given to the best punter in college football. Then, in 2014 and 2015, you had Tom Hackett. 2016 went to Mitch Wishnowsky, and 2017 went to Michael Dixon, and you better believe the one thing these guys all shared in common was their home country of Australia. Now, if a 5-year run at the best punter in college football coming from a single country doesn't light a fire under coaches' butts, then I don't know what would. So now you must be wondering, what the heck were the boys doing down under? Well, you see, when that first group of Australians that went pro got done in the NFL, they didn't simply just return home to plant gardens and breed kangaroos. They came with the knowledge of how to dominate American football, and they wanted to bring it to the young lads back home, which started out with a little program called Pro Kick Australia, which was founded in 2007 by, you guessed it, Nathan Chapman, the second Aussie.
That's cool. I didn't know that.
Now you think, well, just because of former NFL punters teaching Aussies how to kick, it can't make them that much better than Americans, because heck, we have former NFL punters here in America, and we're not dominant like that. So there's got to be something else, right? And yes, you would be correct. Something that's been around for much longer than Michael Dixon, Nathan Chapman, or Darren Bennett. To understand why they were so dominant, we have to look all the way back to the 1850s, where a game was slowly being crafted with similar rules to rugby, known as Australian rules football. You see, the Australian timeline of evolution of the game, soccer or football, is a little bit different than everywhere else. It never really got to the point where we are passing the ball as much as we are in American football, and it had similar rules to rugby, as it's one continuous game not broken up by individual plays, but instead of tossing it to teammates like in rugby, you could kind of just punch the ball with your hand or even kick it. Yes, kick it. Now, watching a game of AFL, it becomes very apparent what this sport had evolved into. Yes, its own unique entity, but if you're an American football coach watching this, you're looking at a literal breeding grounds for punters.
Yeah, I mean, that makes 100% sense. I mean, whenever they're, punters go out there and they have their portions of practice, like with, You know, but they're not going out there and they're just punting for, 4 or 5 hours straight and stuff like that. You know, it's like they'll have their certain moments in practice, but it's not like they're just nonstop kicking, punting. And it's like that through all the grades. Like, in high school and I mean, I'm not sure on college, but I know for high school, punters and kickers, they might have a 2-hour practice, 5 days a week, 4 days a week, whatever it may be, depending on if it's in season, off season. They might only go out there and punt for 15 minutes, and then they're just sitting there and they're helping out for the rest of the practice. They're not doing anything else.
That's how it is in college. College, you have your periods. You might have like 13 periods, and in the middle of 13 periods, you do your special team section, and the kickers and the punters are out there practicing, and they practice return, punt return, kick return, all that stuff. But for the most part, even when they're doing that, they're not even using the kickers and punters for that segment. Kickers and punters on another field, and they're just punting and kicking on another field by themselves. It's usually like 3 of them over there by themselves. They're practicing the snap, they're practicing the hold, they're practicing all that stuff for situations. And they only practice for maybe 10, 12 minutes.
Yeah, it's not much. So I mean, then you go from this and you're watching someone that they religiously is, obviously a big part of the game. I mean, it's how they score, it's how they create marks to create scoring opportunities. So having that precision while punting the only, I guess, transition will be is with the NFL, you're punting for not just you don't need just the power to make it the distance, but also the hang time. So like they're working the accuracy, but now they got to involve the hang time in it as well. But when you're used to holding a ball and kicking it, you know exactly how to drop it, where to drop it, how to do it in stressful situations. You don't have to think, you just act. And I think that's what makes it real special.
Yeah.
Telling me I can watch athletic, physical players run around and then in the most intense circumstances kick the ball with high levels of precision, sometimes as far as 50 to 60 meters away, while not being afraid of collisions and able to make tackles or even run the ball if need be. Now, for those of you who don't understand why this is such a promising thing to look at, during the 80s to early 2000s, America was having its own problem with punters. The more we focused on specializing the spiral punt, the less we focus on other things like physicality, athleticism, and punting as a whole was starting to get a bad rap as the unathletic guys who became too good at their jobs to replace but were a liability under any other circumstances. This is what made Australians so appealing, because not only did they come over just to punt, they came over to change the entire sport by opening up the playbooks of special teams coordinators. Now, instead of punting from the pocket, with the Australians there was an entirely new style of punting that was popularized in colleges, often known as the rollout or rugby style. I like to refer to it as the read option of punting. You see, their first read is to check and see if they're bringing the appropriate amount of pressure and keeping their eyes on you. If that's true, then they are doing all of that, then you're going to hold on to the ball. But if they're not coming hard or coming at bad angles, you just take off and run with it. This made guarding Australians extremely difficult because they weren't just legitimate threats as punters, but they were legitimate threats as runners as well
athletes,
if you didn't bring the right pressure. On top of that, their second read is that if you didn't bring the appropriate amount of pressure, they were liable to hold the ball long enough that your punt returner was going to be catching it in a congregation of players known as the opposing punt coverage team. This is how players like Adam Korzak were able to go entire seasons forcing negative 11 return yards on the season.
Wow.
Special teams coordinators still don't have good answers for that style of punting Australians are bringing, because even when you dial up the heat on them, Australians have been used to punting under that level of pressure because it's just the previous sport that they played. So we've gone almost a decade now of pure Australian domination at the collegiate level, which may lead many to wonder why their impact hasn't.
That's exactly what I was about to say. Before they say it, I want to hear your opinion. Why do you think that it hasn't taken shape in the NFL quite yet, or will it eventually?
I mean, it happens, but it just depends on the kickers. Not every kicker is able to do that, to get outside and kick it well. They're just not. So, and then you have coaches. Most of these coaches are old dudes. They have their style. If that's not part of their game plan, they're not bringing it in there.
Right. So, and like the way I think about it too is just like the different level of athleticism that's in the NFL versus college. I mean, even watching some of these, some of them are from bigger schools, but not all of them. Where you can get away with doing, these like rinky-dink type plays where you can get away with something like that. But it's rare that you'll see something like that with like even like a big SEC, Big Ten school. And then the NFL even more.
The game is different.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen it multiple times where the defense gets in pretty quick. We know that it doesn't always happen, but there's situations where the defense is there before the punter even gets a chance to prepare the ball. Like as soon as he's getting the ball, he's about to get sacked. We've seen that before. So I think in those situations, a rugby style can work. But if the defense is constantly getting faster and faster, you have to do something else to prepare yourself. They have to start, snapping the ball off to the angle. Right. Have to be to make that work.
And then, with the NFL too, it's because they're not as high scoring as what most, especially like lower level college football, and I say lower level, like mid-tier level college football programs are. The scores don't typically get run up super high. So possession of the ball and stuff like that is super important. You do that and you make one mistake, well, that's it. And as a punter, that might be it for you in general. Like you might, it's not you're done, you're gone. Like you might be gone the next morning. Type of situation if you try to risk something like that. So I think that plays a big part in it as well.
It definitely does. I mean,
it's great.
I'd probably say in college you're less likely to get benched because it's not like they have a bunch of kickers.
Right.
But it does happen. It does happen. It's not like if pros, they'll go out and find somebody else. But college, they might have two on the roster. One is one scholarship, one not. But
the reward is bigger than the risk in college because normally you can get back down and score. With the NFL, scoring a touchdown is hard to come by in plenty of most games. So it's like risking that and then either it getting blocked or you getting tackled or a turnover on downs, and now all of a sudden you went from putting them back at their own even 25-20. We're not even saying like inside the 10, 25-20, but instead now they're on your 30-yard line or your 40-yard line. That's a big difference. That's 10 yards and they're in field goal range. So it's definitely a different risk and reward system with the NFL.
in the NFL ranks as it has been in college. I mean, aside from pretty much Michael Dixon, many of the others coming out of college football haven't had nearly as much of success as the Aussies of old who were dominant in the early 2000s. And the answers for this shows just how intertwined these two sports are. You see, in the 60s and 70s, the main way Aussies took shots on the goal was this thing called a flat punt, essentially a knuckleball meant to fly straight towards the target, and then mix this in with some actual drop kicks. Now, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to tell that this is not the primary style of punting that we were doing here in the Americas, so it didn't necessarily translate. But when we go into the 80s and 90s, when Darren Bennett and Nathan Chapman and Sav Rocca were all growing up and learning the game, the popularity of the drop punt was taking off, and position players, as they were often asked to take those shots from 40 to 60 meters out, had developed a much different technique than those before them. This would allow them to hit drop punts or on occasion go for the barrel or torpedo punt, which would be canonized in American lingo as the spiral, from extreme distances. Bennett was even noted to hit an 80-meter torp for a goal at one point. Pretty much the only way to hit the ball like this with this much strength and consistency is to have a long, fluid swing to allow your body to get through the ball as much as your leg did. Looking at still frames of Bennett's swing, you can actually see similarities to many of the other American greats like Ray Guy himself, Reggie Roby, and other punters of that time. But as sports typically do,
Roby,
even this...
Golly!
Yeah, Roby, he has high kicks. Yeah, very high kick, yeah.
I remember
you don't see, like, a lot of punters, they don't even kick the high like that no more.
No, they don't fully do it either. I remember we had a guy, random story, but the high school punter, he played soccer with me and he started punting, and he had bad hip flexor issues and different stuff like that, and he started punting, and because of having to do that, and that's what he won. He won that long extension, that long stretch. And it actually cured a lot of his injuries that he was having because he finally was locking in on getting flexible,
Stretching out,
and actually stretching,
Style in Australia would change, with the position players taking significantly less lengthy shots at the goal and focus more on short passes. And as this kicking style changed in Australian rules football, we began to see a punting style change in America, a miraculous one-to-one change as the long flowing swings of old were being replaced with short jab-like swings seen by Tom Hackett, Michael Dixon, and Adam Corsi. The style of play is insanely effective at the collegiate level though, hence the Aussie take takeover, but it has struggled to find the same consistency at the pro levels. But the gameplay style, from hitting longer punts to much shorter, quicker punts under higher pressure, can be seen being reflected in how Aussies punt, from hitting deep booming punts to running and letting pressure come to them, and then getting off a punt away from the returner with just enough hang time to force a fair catch. So all in all, from punting schematics to punting techniques, all the way down to how the defending teams must defend the punt, Australians have completely warped the game, and I know American punters as well as Australian punters are so grateful for the influence that they have had, and it is to this day one of the biggest phenomenons in sports as general. So as always, if you enjoy punting content, consider subscribing. Have an amazing day in peace.
Definitely seen a couple of those games in those moments. I mean, the kicking has changed quite a bit, and that shorter kick, which is kind of what we see mostly, which is what we talked about earlier, what we see mostly in the games now. But the few players like Colson and his brother and the guy they showed originally that are still actually currently in the league from, I think it was Seattle or where it's from.
Yeah,
they have the best punts in the league. Yeah, and it's like the punt is a weapon. It's a weapon that you utilize. But a lot of these short kickers, yeah, they still can get some distance, but they cannot get the hang time as like Colson. Colson's hang time is ridiculous at times.
Right.
And it's like the hang time is to allow your team to get to the point of stopping them before they even take off. That short punt, it hurts you. I've never understood why punters punt that way, because it's not effective as what they would think it is in NFL. At least in NFL.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty spot on. I think it'll be interesting to see if we'll start seeing what is now more of a gimmick style play. But as we know with like how the NFL works is these little things like, the more Aussie where they run out to the side and they boot it out, eventually those things make their way to the NFL, and they'll have some people that'll try it. And then it's just a matter of is it successful? And the other tough thing is with college, there's just so many more teams, so many more players. So, your odds of having someone that does it well is really good. There's more opportunities, whereas the NFL is 32 teams. That's it, and then if you mess up, that's it. So that's why I feel like some of these gimmicky, I call it a gimmick, but y'all know what I'm saying, don't always play out, because they might try it, but as soon as it fails, it's like, nope, it's no longer worth it anymore. As soon as it costs a singular game, it's no longer worth it anymore. So it would have to be something where it fully develops to where it is, they're able to come up with a game plan, a blocking scheme. They're able to have it happen consistently, like time and time again, because punting should be one of the most consistent thing that happen. It should always go downfield. I mean, they should never rarely get blocked, or you should barely get tackled before releasing the ball. So until they can make it where it's consistent, I don't see it going in the NFL.
Like, excuse me, right now, the only times you see the rugby style kick, there's only really like two situations. One is when they're trying to waste some clock, and it's towards the end of the game. They don't want them to get the ball back, so they're trying to waste a few seconds, which sometimes is vital in how long it may take a team to get down the field. So they'll run off to the side and kick it and try to get to the corner. Even if it goes to a touchback, it's still, you're wasting time because the ball is bouncing towards the end zone. Most likely, it's not a full shot to the end zone. And then the other time is when the defense busts through the line of protection, and so they have to run to outside.
Right.
But even then, it's like they're still trying to boot as far as possible. So I mean, it's still. I still think the straight up punter style kick is the most effective out of all of them.
I think so too. But I like the fact that having that tool in your shed is such a big asset. And I think that's what the biggest thing with having Australian punters come over is that they're not just punters, they're athletes. So they have the ability to set up a play that is a fake punt, in a position. And, if you don't convert, you don't convert. It was a risk, but you still have that ability to not have to be, right here, one step punt. You have the athletic ability to run out and be like, okay, I don't have this lane. Okay, well, I can still kick it and I can get something to where it can get down the field. That is a great tool to have in your shed to open up your playbook, and especially when it comes down to playoffs, Super Bowls and stuff like that, when you start to be more risky because it's win or go home.
When I was at Fresno State, our kicker and punters always had quarterback experience, all of them.
Yeah.
Because they would say, okay, they see a situation and they see the gunners are going too far out, they just change the play right there. And one of our, I think it was I say not Spruhoff, like it was a couple times. He was ex QB, dude was like 6'6" tall, so he can launch that thing down super far.
Right.
You know, then Klitzer, he was a quarterback at point, so like but he was super athletic, super strong, fast. So he liked to hit. He like deadlift like 450. Like he likes to hit. You know what I'm
he likes it. Yeah.
So,
that's how Thomas Borstead was too. He worked out harder than some of our linemen, which was crazy.
So, I mean, situations like that, which most teams just got to be strategic in how you train your punters, and how you pick your punters. Like I said, they tried to pick punters who had either receiver experience or that had quarterback experience.
Yeah.
So it just depends on what you do, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I'm interested now that we got a little more in tune of what happened and how the Aussie punters have kind of changed the game up a bit and the strategies behind it. I'll definitely be able to keep a better eye on it. And, you know, who knows, maybe, maybe 5-10 years down the line, it becomes more of a normal. And you know what? I hope it does, because it'll make the game more fun. That's for sure. It'll make the game more fun.
We'll definitely see.
Yeah. Well, anyway, guys, appreciate you guys. Love you guys. Hit that like button, subscribe. We're trying to get to 25K by the end of the year. It's a long ass. Let's do it. Cheers.
Share the video.